Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you all for joining. It's nearing the end of the day here in Europe, so hopefully you have a coffee to hand. Hopefully you still have some energy. And if you're in the US, I guess the working day has, kicked off, so you'll probably have a coffee in hand anyway. My name's Ben. I'm head of business development here at Hodo, and over the next half an hour, we'll be looking at the wonderful world of B2B payment terms, specifically in a global context. So to help us with the discussion, we're going to be drawing on the findings of a recent survey that we ran of more than 200 B2B merchants and marketplaces that sell online in Europe and the US. We'll be exploring the respondents' attitudes towards and experiences of payment terms, and we'll be looking at some of the common challenges they encounter when offering them. For example, we'll be looking at the reasons why 79% of all businesses surveyed considered offering payment terms as an essential lever for business growth. And on the flip side, why only 16% of respondents found it very easy to offer payment terms globally in different markets. We'll also be looking at the benefits of having a single provider for payment terms, as well as some predictions for the future of B2B e-commerce in 2024. So yeah, quite a lot to get through, but I hope you're all looking forward to it. Just a couple of housekeeping rules before we start. So the format of the webinar is a panel discussion with my two guests, Louis and Sean. We want to make this session as interactive as possible, so we've built in some time to take questions at the end. If you do have any questions that come to mind, just pop them in the chat and we'll raise them as part of the conversation. And finally, the webinar will also be recorded, and we'll send you a copy of the recording after the event by email. So yeah, feel free to circulate it with your colleagues or anyone you think might find it interesting. So without further ado, to help me today, I am joined by Lou Carbin, the co-founder and president of Hodo, and Sean Last, the director of partnerships at our partner Balance. Balance are the leading provider of B2B payment solutions in the US. So yeah, really privileged to have you here, Sean. If you could both, if we just kick off with a quick introduction of yourselves to the audience, starting with you, if that's all right, Sean.
Sure, yeah, thanks for that intro and great to be here. Sean Last, heading up partnerships at Balance for the last 2.5 years. So I've sort of witnessed and been part of why I'm so excited for today, because to see the journey that this partnership has been on and what we've built and the fruits of the labor coming to the front. We've got a mixed background, spent 5-6 years in wealth management, moved into tech, now back to the perfect meeting point of finance and tech, so fintech. Londoner at heart as well, so always finding ways for Balance to start expanding more into Europe. So this was also part of the reasons why we got started on this partnership. But thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Lovely, thank you, Sean. Yeah, really looking forward to the discussion today. And Louis, if you could just do the same, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. Very happy to be here today. And Ben, brave attempt at pronouncing my name. So
not easy.
Yeah, Lou Carbin, co-founder and president at Hodo. I'm actually a French national. I've done most of my career in finance and tech, in the end. Now we've coined a term about 15 years ago to describe it, like fintech. And at Hodo, we set up the company about 6 years ago, and now we're a pan-European scale-up focusing on B2B payment services. And that means we help merchants, marketplaces grow faster by offering better payment methods to their customers. And one thing which we'll be talking about today is just like Balance, but with the European lens. We focus on payment terms, also known as trade credit, which is how businesses settle their invoices in 30 or 60 days. And that's what's really key to support B2B trade, and how B2B trade is actually migrating online faster and faster. So we thought that with Balance we had very complementary angles. Balance being the the category winner in the US, and us being also the emerging leader on the European side. And that was the beginning of the partnership. And for us in Europe, due to the complexities of the landscape, we're a regulated entity with we're an electronic money institution, so we do payments across the European Union. We're headquartered in the UK, so there's going to be a lot of talks about London being the fintech hub for Europe. We also have offices in continental Europe, actually, and about 100 staff covering the main geographies here. So super excited to talk about the future of global B2B payments with Sean and Ben today.
Lovely, thank you, Louis. Yeah, I think it would be good to start, quite high level. I'm sure that most people are familiar with what payment terms are, but could you just give a quick overview of what we mean by them, and also why we've seen an uptick in demand for online payment terms in the recent years?
Do you want to go first, Sean, on this one? I'll take a stab. Like Ben said, I think everyone should be always familiar with when we say net terms, digital trade credit, or trade credit in B2B. And Louis touched on it earlier. I think trade credit, net terms, whatever, has been the way that business B2B has been done since hundreds of years ago. And important for me to stress that will remain the case. What I think Hodo and Balance are doing is essentially trying to just bring that process online as B2B sort of trade and the whole B2B experience goes online. But essentially, payment terms, in the most simple way, are the conditions set by a merchant to the buyer about when they need to pay, the types of payments they need to make. Because when a merchant is extending net terms to a buyer, basically it means they're shipping the products or services before receiving the funds, which can include obviously risks, and it needs to be managed well, and we'll talk a bit about that later. And in B2B, why trade credit's always been at the forefront is because we're talking sometimes transactions in the millions, hundreds of thousands. So of course, people aren't just whipping out a credit card and buying 50 crates of steel or whatnot. So that's where the net terms element came into it. And I think as to sort of the recent increase in online payment terms, similar, but not exactly the same as what we've seen in B2C. I think, at least I've seen in the last year, a bit of an oversimplification of people throwing it out there that B2B payments and the experience is going to has to be the same as B2C, and the consumerization of B2B payments valid, but like I said, an oversimplification. So we'll dig into that a bit more, but essentially it's part of why there's been an increase in the online payment terms. It's really part of the broader momentum we saw with COVID, obviously, of commerce moving more and more online, and the momentum of B2B commerce moving more and more online. So it's part of those trends as well. And yeah, looking forward to digging in. See.
Yeah, I think, Sean, there's one point where I agree with you so much when you highlighted the fact that payment terms or net terms, whatever we want to call them, have been around for decades, if not centuries. This is so true. And sometimes, when I summarize what Hodo or does, just in a nutshell, sometimes I end up saying, well, it's buy now, pay later, but for professional buyers. And sometimes, especially for VCs, then it rings a bell. Oh, you're like a Klarna or a firm of B2B. But it's, it's such a reduction of what we actually do, because I mean, BNPL is the way companies have been trading historically. And the hassle is that making those payment terms happen in the context of an online transaction is just tough, because you need to do all your credit assessments, your fraud detection, like all the stuff that would happen offline. How do you compress it into an online experience that makes your company look good? And I think it's fascinating, the conjunction of, B2B trade moving online, and how do we create the scaffolding that Stripe, Adyen, PayPal have created in B2C? How do we make this infrastructure adapted to B2B? And we need to restart from a blank page and take into account just the specificities of B2B.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it so challenging, but also so interesting, is that I heard, I think our CEO mentioned, is the way it's like, in a way where we're solving a problem a bit ahead of time before it exists. Yeah. Because the train, the B2B is going online, everyone's jumping in. It's very much left the station the last couple of years. But what we're seeing when we talk to partners, merchants, you name it, competitors, to do it right, one, still hasn't been defined, I think, by the industry as well as by us, because every case is so different. And it's being built as we go. And I think you guys had the foresight to start doing it a few years ago. And on the BNPL part, like you said, we get asked a lot, we're looking for B2B BNPL. And do we fit under the umbrella of BNPL, buy now, pay later? By definition, yes. Yeah. But I agree with you. It does a disservice to everything that's involved. And in particular, BNPL has got a bit of an interesting sort of reputation right now, B2C.
Yeah, it's a bit tainted.
Yeah, exactly.
To be totally transparent, but you're right in that there's been a kind of acceleration. When we started, I think back in 2018, the category was still emerging or not very well defined, and I feel there's been really a tipping point around COVID, and 2021, for the first time in human history, there have been more sales done online in e-commerce than in person. I'm talking B2B here, and that's when I look at our clients this side of the pond, and I'm sure it's even more the case in the US. You can really, when we talk to them, we see that their biggest distribution channel, the one that's growing the fastest, is e-commerce. It's actually the only thing that's growing in today's environment. It's e-commerce, and the train's leaving the station. And how do you win? And payments, I'm sure we'll come to that, are really a focal point and a key differentiator in this experience that you deliver to your buyer.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Louis, you mentioned that B2B e-commerce is obviously becoming more and more popular, and more businesses are trading online. I think you just mentioned that with COVID, more sales are done online in B2B for the first time ever than compared to when in person. What are steps or processes that are involved in offering payment terms online? And I guess, how do they differ from a more traditional offline journey?
Yeah, so I think conceptually the steps are roughly the same. What's interesting is how they are organized and digitized. Eventually in B2B, so people want to pay with those payment terms, those net trade credits. So you need to be able to say within a split second, this client coming to my website is eligible to 30 days, 60 days, whatever. And if you do this, it means that you need to have some, credit decisioning in place, scoring, credit checks, whatever you call them. So that's one brick. But however good your credit checks, then some invoices will be paid late. So you need another capability, which is collections, chasing, dunning. And then despite your best collections efforts, some invoices will remain unpaid. And you need protection against unpaid invoices, which in the traditional offline world would be called credit insurance. And then it's great to offer 30, 60 days of payment terms to your customers, and that's going to help you grow and win more deals, of course. But that has an impact on your DSO, on your working capital. And actually, a lot of our merchants come to Balance and Hodo saying, I like the idea of winning more business, but could you advance the payment of some of those invoices? So all those activities that I've described here are very much the same, credit checks, collections, insurance, financing, the same thing that we found in offline. But what changes is that we need to deliver it 24/7 in a split second, because in e-commerce, every additional second of loading time on a web page means 7 percentage point drop in conversion. So this ability and this infrastructure that we built to deliver payment terms at scale, real time, even to first-time buyers, that helps conversions, that helps client satisfaction, loyalty, and all that. But the way it's encapsulated digitally is very, very different. And one thing that always strikes me is that often when I look at the inbounds that we have, it's merchants or marketplaces that come to us saying, hey, we're looking for a payment solution for our professional customers. And oftentimes our clients see the tip of the iceberg, which is the payment bit, but which is very B2C, it's a bit crafted by B2C, whereas in B2B, payments is only part of the whole workflow, where it starts with the credit decision, the fraud detection, collections, financing, and you actually have an entire B2B workflow that needs to be delivered alongside the payments or checkout bit. And it's the combination of all those modules which is really fascinating, and where you have so much difference between a credit card provider, a PSP in the B2C world, versus providing a solution that actually meets the demands of a B2B merchant.
Yeah. No, super insightful, Louis. So you touched on there, that it can be used for growth, payment terms. So we found that 79% of businesses surveyed in the UK and US thought that payment terms were essential for growth. A question for you, Sean. Why do you think offering payment terms is such an important factor for B2B merchants and marketplaces looking to grow their business?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think following on from Louis said, where it's like when they come in, and we see it a lot, we need payment terms online. Great. And then as soon as, for example, in B2B, they've been doing it, the vast majority of these companies, they do it off their own balance sheet, essentially. They just pick up the phone and they extend the credit accordingly. So when you start to get into these conversations and they start to realize it sounds good, but for example, you're going to have to give up margin, someone's paying for it. Like, no, actually, why would I pay you X percent when I've been doing it and it's worked okay? And then as soon as you start to go into a layer about, and to your question, like, why is it so important? I think we're starting to call it, we sort of labeled it as invisible losses, right? Again, I don't think they even realize fundamentally the problem and the loss of revenue, for example, they're facing by having either no process for underwriting and approving new buyers, or typically a very, very drawn out manual process, because when there's high friction of these type of processes or low approval rates, you're essentially discouraging applications, new buyers or existing buyers who want to spend more, but low approval rates, and that's all leading to lost revenue, right? So the simple ones are saying, net terms is what people expect. So it's going to attract new buyers. Very, very true. In business, everyone expects to have net terms. If they don't see it on your e-commerce store, if it's not a simple process for them to go through that approval if they're net new, they will simply go somewhere else. But on the flip side, once you do offer them that and they see it, what we're seeing statistically with our clients is sometimes up to 30% increases in AOV for these clients who are using the digital net terms. It's obviously, as Louis mentioned as well, it leads to repeat purchases, because people talk a lot about, B2B is going in the B2C route, and there's a lot of truth to it. But what is definitely true is that as these buyers and the demographics of buyers in B2B are changing, we're seeing merchants push off digitalization or doing it in phases, and it's understandable. But there's no question, and make no mistake, that this shift, this real fundamental shift, is already underway, but it's very much coming, whether you like it or not. And things like loyalty, it just means if you're not delivering the experience to the buyer, they will go somewhere else, because that's what they're used to from their personal shopping experience. So there's a few of those, and then again, things that should be always top level when they're thinking about the process. But as you start to automate, and the AR overhead costs, right? Again, as you boil it down, they're like, the hours saved from the automation, or the DSO, like Louis said. When you ask them, you don't want to give up margin, but have you actually calculated your current DSO is what? They say 50. So if you use a tool such as a Hodo and Balance, your DSO is going to reduce to, let's call it 25. And you currently have X millions and billions in DSO. So reducing it by half is billions of dollars. Do you now start to work out the ROI by having that $1 billion and that cash flow free up from day one? And then the penny starts to drop as well. So the starting point is they want net terms, and they know it's needed. But as you start to really drill down, the sort of the broad spectrum of what it's enabling in terms of growth becomes wider and wider.
In terms of the benefits, it's I'd love to have a separate conversation with you guys. But one thing that we've measured for us, is clearly there's an uptick in average order size, but that's going to be usually 30-40%. It's not like someone who needs one bag of cement for a job, they're not going to buy 3 just because they get the payment terms. But where we see the real, the dial really moving for us, it's on repeat purchases. And sometimes we see a merchant whose clients do one purchase per quarter or something like that. And then suddenly you have a segment of clients who are like, okay, this merchant is going to become my main supplier. And because I'm getting a nice experience, I have my trade account, the trust is established, I know that I'm able to settle at the end of the following month in one batch transaction. This is so convenient that I'm going to repatriate all my purchases. And basically this means winning share of wallet, and sometimes you see 200% increase in the frequency and the loyalty of your clients. And that's a massive driver. And as you said, we see so many merchants who are giving trade credit, but sometimes only to 30% of their portfolio. Well, you're missing out on 70% of your portfolio.
Well, they don't even know. You ask them what percent, and they're like, oh.
Or they don't even know. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
No, Lou,
really that loyalty aspect, I thought is, in what we observe is really, really, transformational.
Yeah, I think that's super important. People love what they're comfortable with, and if they know that they can get payment terms from a reliable source at the same place, they're just going to keep coming back and back and back. And yeah, Sean, I love that piece on invisible losses. I've never heard it like that, but it's it's cool to sort of visualize it like that.
We might steal the expression.
I didn't make that
that's
myself.
A good one. Yeah. Okay, perfect. No, really interesting points. Thanks both. Moving on to sort of cross-border payment terms, which is, I guess, really relevant in this conversation today. So in our survey, we found that the majority of respondents wanted to expand their reach into new markets in 2024, sorry. But at the same time, just 16% of respondents said that it was very easy to offer payment terms. in multiple regions. So yeah, the question is, what are some of the challenges associated with offering cross-border payment terms? So in the UK, and then maybe in the US, or even further afield, what are some of the challenges?
Shall I take have a crack?
You're definitely more qualified to take a crack.
Yeah. Well, this thing about exports is particularly acute in B2B. And this is not something that we expected when we started Hodo. And we see that very often, and maybe that's because the European markets are not as deep as the US. Like you can build a massive company only sell to the US. But in Europe, you take your regular English or German merchant. As soon as they do 25 million of turnover, they actually start exporting. And you have relatively mid-sized tiny merchant who's like, hey guys, I have a couple of customers in the Netherlands, in Spain, can you help me out? So we've had to internationalize our footprint much earlier than we expected. And that comes with so many challenges. And the first one being compliance. And every jurisdiction is different. So payments is a regulated activity, and making it work in Germany or in the UK is very different. Like lending is globally, lending to a business is a unregulated activity in the UK, highly regulated in Germany. And if you're, I imagine, a merchant based in the US, and you want to manage your payment terms in Germany, that comes with a lot of complexities. So I think compliance is a big one. Then the local settlement methods are different. So German clients will expect to pay using Sofort or GiroPay. In the Netherlands, they will have IDL. In Belgium, Bank Contact, and rebuilding all that, all those connectors internally as a merchant is would be a massive waste of time, but also understanding the local payment preferences is quite hard. And here I'm just talking about payments, by the way, but the same is true for all the other modules that we discussed before. So for instance, doing credit underwriting in a new country is not easy. So imagine you're a UK-based merchant. Maybe you have your credit analysts in the UK, but how do you decide whether a prospect in the US can be trusted and can receive 60-day terms? Same with collections. How do you collect in France from a bad payer? Good luck with that. So it's all those complexities, and even in Europe, where there is the European Union and some form of harmonization of payments, the local landscapes, the local providers, the data sources, the payments practices are so different that just selling cross-border is a challenge, and navigating the ocean of the different local providers and creating the stack that fits your business is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, super insightful, Louis. Yeah, I guess the theme there is just complexity on every front. So yeah, on buyer preferences, compliance, languages, it's forgot
the languages.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And then interestingly, in our survey, we found some differences in B2B merchants' preferences for a single payment method provider. And this difference mainly came down to the size of the merchant. So only 43% of larger respondents with turnovers of over $400 million felt it was important to work with a single solution provider, compared with an average of 62% for smaller businesses. Question for you, Sean. Why do you think that having a single solution provider is more important for these smaller businesses as opposed to the much larger ones?
So I put it down to a few things, and I think they will converge. So definitely with smaller businesses, they don't have the resources or the both financially necessarily or the manpower to manage an even more complex project type of a business, as well as it's overall these smaller merchants are usually, when you ask them a priority for the business, they're more skewed to we need to grow new clients compared to some enterprises do something different. And for smaller buyers and new buyers, having this approach is going to be fundamental to getting them on board compared to an enterprise who has their book of buyers for the last 20, 30 years. And it also goes back to your question. When we speak to enterprises more and more, we realize, good, but I've got my buyers for the last 20 years. They're very big buyers. I'm not suddenly going to move them to a third party financing offering, or there's no need. And again, what we say is, great, I think that's a good idea. Have you thought about what we call the long tail, but let's call them your smaller buyers who, again, it's those invisible losses. They probably have no clue what's going on with them. They're wasting sort of sales reps' time, They're taking up a lot of sales reps' time when sales reps themselves would love to be out there in the field, spending time with high value and the bigger types of customers. And if you start to automate it, suddenly these smaller buyers are going through a self-service approach to getting approved, to purchasing, to invoicing, to the reconciliation, to all of it. And that's why when I say converge, I think fast forward a bit, and it will be just as important, maybe more important to these enterprises when they start to, and we're seeing it slowly but surely, think of that downstream, that long tail, which sometimes is 60, 70% of their buying base, who they have not really tapped into. So that's at least my thinking as to why off the bat we saw that discrepancy, like you said. But when we run this report next year, I think we'll start to see those numbers converge.
Yeah. So this is so true, and also, one thing that we've observed with a few clients, and that's an interesting development, is that initially they came to Hodo because they wanted a payment solution for e-commerce, and fine, this is what we're really good at. But then as they did it, they realized that they had streamlined their entire accounts receivables process, and their whole finance operations, DSO issues, chasing invoices had disappeared. And it's exactly what you said. Then they were like, oh, wow, all those invisible losses, that time spent in back and forth between, sales and finance, arguing about how this client should be invoiced, reconciled, credit notes, what have you. All this instantly disappeared, and you focus on, selling, serving your client on your core business. So we've had quite a few merchants come to us with, actually, Hodo, could you take this existing book of trade customers that we have, because we don't want to manage them anymore? And that's what I'm sure something similar potentially happened with you, but initially we were very online focused. And as time passes, we're developing solutions for the offline journey because there's just a lot of demand there.
Exactly. That journey is never going to go away, so to speak, in B2B. That's the point. We're just trying to combine it more with that online approach. And like I said at the beginning, the net terms as well. It's always going to be the main payment preference in B2B. But your buyers are just going to be moving online. So you need a better way of doing it online, essentially.
Yeah. And actually, from a product perspective, when you said, at the beginning, we're also still crafting the future. I think we're digitizing this entire part of the finance value chain.
Exactly.
I think this is still a bit of a work in progress, because having the really seamless omni-channel experience where you manage payment terms for, if your client shows up on your website, or if he calls the sales rep, orders via an email, or shows up at the warehouse, making sure that this is all stitched together and consistent. I don't think we're 100% there at Hodo. This is part of
it doesn't exist. I don't think it exists. That's I think the reason why we also came together on the piece we are tackling together for now as the starting point.
But I think over the next couple of years, this kind of omni-channel cross-border purchasing experience is definitely going to become a reality, and something that I can see that we're not far from something that was very aspirational 5 years ago.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you both. Super insightful.
You're about to tell us that we're running out of time, Ben.
Yeah, we're running. Of course, we're running out of time. But I think we've got a bit more time. So Hodo and Balance partnership, really revolutionary. So really excited to get into this. Can you tell me a little bit about the relationship between Hodo and Balance, and how businesses are able to offer payment terms to customers in both Europe and in North America?
So when we discussed with Balance, with Sean, with Bar and the team, it was amazing to see that we were very like-minded API first businesses taking a fresh stab at B2B payments in our respective markets. And we do see that merchants are a bit tired of integrating 15 providers just to offer payments in a market. Like, imagine I moved to Germany. In the old days, I had to integrate with a credit bureau in Germany, an insurance provider, financiers, a PSP, and I had to do all that stuff in every new country. I actually forgot the collections agencies in that group. And Hodo and Balance are both providing a digital version to do all that stuff with one single API to rule them all in our respective markets. Now, right now, for Hodo, we're focused on doing this end-to-end very well in Europe. It made sense for us to be able. We have clients who export into the US. We cannot serve them. We're leaving money on the table. We're letting our clients down. It made sense to come up with an answer, partner with Balance, who have a similar take on the problem, and offer an integrated solution where, with one integration into Hodo, you can cover your European buyers, but also your US-based clients, and that's the powerful solution that we bring to the market with Balance.
Yeah, I think I'd add, say it hasn't existed, whilst we believe it's true, obviously people are going to think we can't be objective, true to some extent. But I think from the beginning we were both our own conversations and ours to the market very upfront. The fact that we wanted to go in a bit into Europe. We could have tried to go it like most of traditional B2B payment providers do. They find the ways of doing it themselves, but essentially it's 10% of the work, if that. They don't even open up a local entity. They do other ways, and that's why the experience is pretty poor. And we said, and I'm sure you had the discussions your side, like, okay, we need to go into America or wherever, how to do it. Let's just start thinking of becoming an entity there. We realized quickly, no, let's take the best in breed in Europe, the best in breed in USA. We know what we're doing here. You know very well what you're doing here. And now by combining not just the product, but the local expertise, so being able to have, depending where the buyer and the merchants are, they're going to have differing customer service, language support, like we said, the types of payment methods. It's powerful, and that has not existed before. And we're also very, upfront about we are a 5-year-old company, digital API first, focusing on the transformation of B2B commerce, moving online. And for that to do, if these bets, so to speak, that both businesses have taken and the place it pays off, which we're already seeing, that when that shift really comes, it just won't be good enough for these buyers. It's almost new age of business buyers to have these broken experiences or have to use 2, 3, 4 different portals. You're offering one website for your global buyers. Why should they have to do anything else to check out with net terms? And again, it might sound fancy, but net terms for these people in B2B is the same way as, the three of us going into a retail store and just whipping out our credit card or our Apple Pay to buy a new pair of shoes. So you're going to have to deliver on that. And yeah, like Louis said, a very similar DNA of the companies, which was, I think, very important to us and yourselves. And it continues to grow, at least, again, from my perspective, strength to strength.
Yeah, no, it's a super exciting time in the partnership, and yeah, really looking forward to watch it evolve. We are obviously over time. However, we can't leave without getting your predictions for 2024. So yeah, I'd just like to get both of your thoughts on or any predictions or any trends for B2B e-commerce that we're likely to see this year. Maybe start with you, Louis.
So I'll be quick, but I think everything around using AI and machine learning for underwriting. We've just released a new generation of credit models leveraging AI to a deeper extent than what we had before. So we released it in prod last month. This helped us gain massively in predictive power, and our underwriting is going even. That's what we view as our strength, but I think we've gone to another level yet. So I think this is going to be a big one, also when it comes to fraud detection. And the other thing might be this one, putting my European hat on, open banking, account-to-account payments, instant payments. These have been brewing for several years, but we're starting to see an uptick and quite a bit of merchant demand. And I expect this to be a growing theme in 2024. And most merchants should now have, in Europe, open banking on their radar.
I think I'll be bold. I think one, we see a lot of tech players, not just in payments, like I mentioned earlier, moving into the B2B space, saying they do B2B commerce, payments, whatever, and sort of getting away with it to an extent. I think by the end of the year, they will very much be found out, and any provider of any sorts who is thinking about adding some capability to say they do B2B will not. So there'll be a consolidation, I believe, of pure play B2B providers.
Good one.
And
we're seeing it in Europe.
Yeah, it's sure. And in that front, in a similar vein, I think the number, I don't have a number of sort of B2B ecom directors or digital transformation officers or anything like that. The pool of those who have been through their first rodeo of trying a B2B ecom and B2B transformation, getting burnt by it, and now coming and realizing, we need to work with true pure play B2B providers. It's very, very complex. We need to think it out. That pool of individuals will be far, far greater as people initially, understandably, are dabbling into B2B for the first time, and they think they can do with maybe providers or solutions or approaches that worked in B2C, but just will never work in B2B. So I think it's going to be a very interesting year. B2B, everyone's talking about it. That puts me off to some extent. So I think it's still going to grow, but there will be a thought out consolidation of providers and also of how merchants, when they're coming to the table with the likes of us, you and anyone, they will come more educated, because we're still very much in that education phase in the B2B industry.
That's a great prediction. That's the market is really taking shape, and who's winning, who's not performing is also becoming more more transparent. And yeah, the merchants are going up the learning curve. Some of them have some scars, and they see what's working and what's not. Yeah, that's a very, very good one.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, I think that's everything. Sean, Louis, thank you very much for joining. Thank you to everyone that has been watching. I think it's been a super insightful webinar. We did run a bit out of time, and there are quite a few questions in the chat. So the Hodo team will get round to answering these for you. I've got all your details. But yeah, super excited to see the development of the Hodo and Balance partnership moving forward this year. As Louis mentioned, it really is, the first of its kind and a really big step forward in the world of B2B payments. So yeah, have a lovely rest of your day, everyone. We'll get back to everyone that messaged in the chat, and come and join us along in the next webinar.
Thanks a lot, Ben. Thanks, Sean.
No, likewise.
Thanks,
everyone. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.